All right, so hi everyone. Hi Poland. How you doing? You good? Cool. It's the evening, so it's the afternoon now. I hope you're still focused. We'll try to go through this in much of a fun manner as possible. So bear with me here. There's not a lot of code, so there's that. So welcome to this talk. The title is Cut Me Some Slack, so that's an English expression. The road to continuous learning and improvement. So we're going to focus on that. My name is Morgan Kobeissi, and if you'd like to tweet or anything, keep in mind there's always the hashtag DevOpsPL. If you'd like to tag me, that's my Twitter handle, MC_MOE. For those who would like to ask questions during the talk but are not inclined to ask me personally, there's the Slido here, so that's a website. So you just go to sli.do and you join. Just put in Slack as a tag, and the questions will start to pop up here. So we could take a look at them together. If once we're done with the talk, if there's still questions, we can take them then, and I can always answer questions later. Okay. That being said, I'll do a quick brief introduction of who I am and what it is I do. So I work for a company called Murex. It's a financial software services company specialized in the capital markets. We're based in France, in Paris, France. And what I do exactly is I work in the R&D department, mainly in the business intelligence domain. I'm a full-stack developer, so I worked from C, C++, backend, moved to Java, and now I do Java backend for front ends and web front ends, web components with Polymer. I'm an agile coach, so I grew into this role out of necessity. I started off as a Scrum master, asking questions, and here we are in this talk, in fact, because I'm an extreme programmer, and I like to think that I am agile rather than do it. So I'm a strong proponent for continuous improvement and continuous learning. I think we all have to, especially in this day and age. And basically, I try to see how I can facilitate software to make sure it can be maintained and easier to write as we move on in time. So basically, my entire Scrum experience and Scrum and XP experience led me to this struggle of how can we be agile rather than just say we're doing it. And it eventually led to saying, okay, great, we're doing sprints, we're doing iterations, but something seems wrong, right? The story I start working on ends up being done in the next sprint, and the sprint after, and the sprint after. So I ended up in something like a mini waterfall rather than in a sprint or iterative or agile philosophy. So this got me to start to think a little bit about what it is that we can do. Why are we overcommitting? What are these random issues that are happening? And which led me to this world of Slack that tries to say if we undercommit, in fact, we will increase our velocity. Just to add that I also work with teams across distributed offices. So the teams I work with are also in Dublin. So that's Ireland and Beirut, Lebanon. Okay, so just a little reminder of the goal. What I will try to show you guys now, from my experience at least, is how can we continuously learn and improve while we make sure that we are in an agile context maintaining consistent delivery, not burning out. We have long-term health, so we can sustain, and ideally we are happy and productive at the same time, okay? And obviously, why does that matter? Because I can brag about that and talk and blah, 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 but if you don't know why it matters or you can't tell someone else why it matters and why we should do that, there's no use. Okay, straight to the subject. It does matter because change is inevitable, especially in this time and age now. Everything is moving faster, everything's fast-paced. Back in the days, maybe it took longer. If you didn't adapt to change, basically, you are more or less going to be left behind. There's a saying that says, adapt or be left behind. So now, these days, if you don't adapt, you directly will be. The whole point of change in the organization is what we call organizational slack, and that is the degree of freedom the company has to change. How much is it allowed to change? How much does it allow itself to change? And not being able to change, is as we'll see later, and how we can remedy that. Slack in itself is a noun. From the dictionary, if you read about that, it's basically what it says is that something is loose, it's not tight. We have these being used already in engineering, so something like that is power lines. They have slack. The reason they're like that is because they need slack, because when the change in temperature happens, they have to be able to expand and contract and all that and not snap. And we have to be able to apply the same thing to our organizations. You have that with expansion joints and bridges as well, same idea. So in a company, if you just worry about speed and going faster and faster and faster and not changing, you're more or less like this car, right? So you can go pretty fast, but that's about it. Right? The moment we know that software development is unpredictable, so it's more or less going to be something like these curvy roads ahead, and what you're looking for is something that's more agile. Interestingly enough, Porsche in their press releases call their cars agile. So that being said, we have to be agile rather than say we're doing it and following we have to dig deeper into the values and the principles of what this brings. What is agile? A quick definition that I like is the one that focuses on responding to change, because we know that software is unpredictable, and that's the whole point. That's why we moved from waterfall to what people practice today, such as Scrum. Because we know if we plan ahead so long, what's going to happen is that everything's going to change and we're going to just go into another vicious cycle of pre-planning. So responding to change in this uncertain environment is very important. If you look at the Agile Manifesto itself, the values, it says responding to change. It's very important over following a plan. It doesn't mean we don't follow one. Okay. If we dig deeper into the principles themselves, it talks about change. So we welcome changing requirements. It's known. And the other thing I'd like to focus on is that it literally says that. It needs people to be motivated, and it needs to be sustainable, okay? So if you go back to that car, it can go very fast, but over a period of time. Usain Bolt can run 100 meters, 200 meters at 44 kilometers per hour, but then what, okay? So that's where we come in with sort of burnout. So this is very important, I think, and we'll try to base the rest of the talk on change and happiness and motivation. One example I'd like to give is this game. It's called Game of 15. I don't know, it has many names. Do you know this game? Does anyone know this game? Yeah, maybe? Okay. All right, so I used to play this a lot as a kid. It wasn't digital, it was, and you have to, basically the whole point is to move the stuff around and sort of reorder the numbers. So you can actually, where is it? There it is. Okay, so there's this generous guy, Lorenzo, who has built this. It's available on GitHub, and basically you get the idea. So there's this empty space here, and this sort of allows you to sort of shuffle the numbers around and reorder. What am I doing? Okay, so there we go, and then voila, bam. So we got one row. So the idea is there's this empty space, right? And this empty space is allowing us to reorder the pieces to the puzzle. Now, imagine this. This is your company, and they say, yeah, but that's not efficient. Okay, so that's another thing, efficiency. So there's speed. Speed is not enough. But what about efficiency? They're like, yeah, but this is not efficient. In fact, there's 11.1% space missing here, right? It's wasted. The space is wasted. So why don't we go ahead and fill that up? Okay? Now, great. The space being used is at 100%, but we've lost something. Obviously, we can't play the game anymore, which means in an organizational manner, we can't change. So if this was the optimal layout for whatever reason, 716483259, and tomorrow these numbers have to be laid out in a different way, you cannot do it, right? We've missed the point of the game. And that's what happens in organizations. We say we want to keep being as efficient as possible, and in fact, yes, but no. Because at times, being more efficient is less productive. That's the whole less is more or less, more is less, more or less. Okay. So efficiency has a cost. All right? And putting humanity aside, we'll look at happiness and motivation later. as we just saw, it's possible to make it less effective by making it more efficient. And this is what we call sub-optimization. So at a level of a system, you could optimize at nodes, at particular nodes, but you wouldn't be actually improving the system. So in this case, imagine that this is your company and that's you here. Okay. That's you here? Yay. Okay, that's you here. That's Bilal, that's Simona. And work comes in from here and goes out from there. So for work to be done, it has to come in and end up here. And the idea is, imagine we're taxed at 100%, each one of us here in this flow chart. What happens is that when you want to receive work, you're going to put it in a box somewhere and say, okay, wait, I'm busy. And once you pick that work up and you're done and you pass it to Bilal, Bilal says the same thing. Wait, I'm busy. You put it in that box. So think about this at a larger scale. All these boxes are waste, okay? This work, everyone's very efficient, but the work is just waiting. So are you guys done? Can you pick me up now? Are you done? Can you pick me up now? So let's introduce Slack, all right? So now we're talking more at an organization level. At the organization, if we're all not taxed at 100%, if work comes in to you, you quickly pick it up. And once you're done, you quickly pass it to Bilal, who passes it to Simona, you pass it to Jonathan, who passes it to Simona. And the unit of work now going through the system is much faster. So we just see we can see now how not optimizing and doing 100% efficiency can actually help the system. It helps the system breathe. And matter of fact, something nice that actually can happen. So in this example, you could see here, so what happened to Bilal? Bilal didn't get lost, but Bilal was able to breathe and reinvent. Why? Because he had time to think, all right? He wasn't at 100% all the time, and he realized, he's like, wait a minute, why do you keep passing me this work? In fact, you don't need to pass me. Maybe historically, Bilal used to be Simona's manager or in the team with Simona somewhere, and he had to approve of the work going through, but now he's in a different team and he's like, I don't need to be getting this and relaying this information. I'm only forwarding this information now. And he can have time to actually self-reflect now and realize that, and have the time to make the necessary change, to take action. And in fact, now Bilal has more time to do things he cares about, and the system is much more optimized. So, being extremely busy can be harmful, all right? I mean, it might not be evident, but when we talk about it, it's straightforward, okay? So, other than efficiency and looking at the company as just a bunch of nodes, what's important to note is that we're human beings, so there's emotions, there's motivation, there's happiness and all of that. So, and when we work at a company or the sorts, we're in it for the long run, right? We're not here to run a 200 meter and then go home. We're here sprint after sprint after sprint after sprint. Okay, it doesn't end. Well, more or less. So you have to be happy, okay? You have to be happy. If you're not happy, you're not going to want to wake up in the morning. You're going to want to grow, right? If you're in it for the long run, you have to grow. How do you grow? We have to learn. So if we are giving this environment, we'll enjoy. And if we enjoy, these companies will definitely succeed. So the other part of the goal that is very important is that we learn, we grow, enjoy the journey. It's about the journey as well. There's an interesting infographic by this company called good.co. Basically what they focus on is the following. So they try to talk about the high cost of unhappiness, okay? So this is like, a survey and data behind it. And they say 100 to 300% of turnover cost the company. Turnovers cost the company 100 to 300% of the base salary of the new employee, of the replaced employee. So there's a cost there, okay? And why am I talking about that? Well, let's look at performance. Where is performance? There's performance, okay. So people that are happier are 30% more productive, okay? They're more creative, and the company overall performs better, okay? All right. Which means, in turn, if they're happy, they have an 87% less likely to leave the organization, which means that the company now has saved 100 to 300% of their base salary. So, as you can see, it's important. And not only is it important from a cost perspective, a company has to make sure the employees are happy because they keep them, they're less sick, by the way, which means they work more, probably, and they won't leave because they're happy and engaged. As knowledge workers, we like what we do, and we're motivated about it, and when we're addicted to it, there's no way we're going to quit it. So this is just trying to, the whole point that I've been trying to send out here is that Slack is an investment and not just a waste, like we saw with the game. It's obvious. You don't want to, remove the space. And it's capacity sacrifice today. Indeed, it is sacrifice, but you're doing that in the interest of long-term health, okay? Sustainable pace, happiness, and motivation. So, as we saw with Bilal, if he was busy all the time, he wouldn't have been able to reinvent the situation and get out of this whole inefficient place that he was in. So what you want to avoid is this. You don't want to be drowning underwater and struggling, okay? But what you want is to be more like this. You want to be chilling, waiting for the cocktail to come through. And if there is a change in this unpredictable nature that we live in, it's okay. If the water raises up a little bit, doggy here is okay, right? Because, he's got that much space. That's slack. Think of that as slack, okay? This poor guy here has no slack. He's underwater. This guy's chilling, okay? So what does that give us? Capacity for change, all right? So we can change, we can redesign, as we saw with Bilal. You can invest more, you have that time. Eventually that will reduce stress. If it reduces stress, and hopefully it motivates you, makes you more happy and engaged, the company keeps to retain its employees. All right. So the reason I'm talking about all this is because the idea is, to give you a backdrop, is I was put in a position where I started reading about this stuff, and I was like, yeah, but why aren't we doing it? And then I went to my manager, and I told him, listen, we got to do Slack. He's like, what? I was like, yeah. And he's like, no, we got to overcommit. I was like, why? He's like, because, you said 30 story points. I'm like, yeah. He's like, yeah, 33. They'll do more. Trust me. You push them, you put them under pressure, it works. I'm like, yeah, but that's not how it works. So I started fighting to just get the 30 in the beginning. And then he's like, fine, you complain too much, take 30. So we went with 30. And then as I read more, it turns out, wait a minute, we should take 27, right? So I go to the guy and be like, 27. So he freaks out, and then he's like, why are you talking nonsense, et cetera, et cetera. So I went and did all this research and put on this presentation for him. And this is what I just did now. This first part was to show you, in case you need to do the same thing, if there's Scrum Masters in here, if you know Scrum Masters, or you're a team lead and want to sort of give this to someone from your colleagues, you've got sort of a logical explanation to go through, all right? Now, that being said, how do we do it? Okay, that's all behind us now. How do we do it? Okay, this is how we do it. Before we go into that, a quick prerequisite. So iteration, and iteration is just a time box. So in Scrum, we call that sprints. Within a sprint, you have velocity, obviously. You can do that. You can estimate that in story points. It's just the amount of work you finish. And then you have something called technical debt. So technical debt is what we incur when we do something quickly to get short-term gains and over the cost for long-term gains. So next time you want to try to move this, you have to move this entire thing with it. Martin Fowler gives a good sort of explanation of the sources of technical debt. There's a nice quadrant he has. So there's deliberate versus unintended, and reckless versus careful. So deliberate and reckless is that, cowboy style. We don't care about time, we don't care about design, we don't care about anything, we just implement, okay? Then you got reckless but unintended. We just didn't know, what is that visitor pattern you're talking about? Or what is a RESTful architecture? And we just didn't know. Deliberate and careful, we've all felt it. You've been pressured, whether it's by the clients, a deadline, or management. And you say, it's okay. The code is not that great, but the tests are green and the feature is usable, so let's go ahead. So you gain now, but you pay the cost later. And then there's this one last place where you know of the consequences. There's A and B, and you went with B, but after feedback from the system, you figured out the problem was A, that it should have been A. All right, so how can you use Slack? One of the things you can do, so in the description of the talk, I talk about how can you keep your head above water, how are you overcommitting, what you can do about that, if you are committing but not delivering, what it is that you can do, and how can you stabilize your velocity. One of the things that a lot of us face is this sort of chart, right? I don't know if anyone uses Jira or something like that, but you probably see something similar where each sprint you finish more or less. You have no idea how much, right? So it's unstable. The problem here is that you overcommitted. What you want to do is you want to commit to less, and that's where you use the first part of the presentation. So you take the max minus the min, and that's space. That is the numbers. So this isn't story points, okay? So these story points, you'll use them as slack. So instead of taking 33, you take 26. You don't take more than 26. Why does that help? It's like the electrical stabilizer in your home, if you have one or if you ever had to use one. It stabilizes, obviously. It makes sure you get the right amount of story points, not electricity or voltage in this case. So imagine we did that. It turned out to be 80 to 20%. You use that slack time for non-critical work, okay? Why? Because then you can put it aside. Because everything is unpredictable, okay? One of the things that can happen, you get a new production issue, the CI is red for some reason, someone killed the services, the VMs don't work anymore, et cetera, et cetera. These things happen every day. There's a randomly failing test, no one knows why, and we're sitting there waiting for the pipeline to be green. You can use that time in case of an emergency and you forget about the slack. One of the things, that's why I spoke about technical debt earlier, is technical debt. That's one of the things that fits the bill in slack time. No matter how good the team is, you remember the quadrant we looked at, we will incur technical debt. Code we write today is legacy tomorrow. You use this technology today, it's outdated tomorrow. You update your versions today, it's outdated tomorrow. It's just, it's just keep going and going and going. So, you have two choices, really. You say, fine, I'm just going to keep all the old crap. And that's best case scenario, and you maintain your velocity while obviously refactoring your new code. Or you say, I clean this technical debt little by little, and with time, I hopefully will increase my velocity because things become easier. Examples of technical debt, dependency versions, I just spoke about that. All these manual tasks that you do today. If you need, you have to write 8 lines of bash to launch your application, that's technical debt. It's not only about the Java code or I don't know what. If you have to manually push something to production or to your staging environment, that's also technical debt, all right? Static code analysis reports, so if you've used Sonar based on find bugs and PMD or check styles, all these violations, that's technical debt. So these are all things you can now look at. The reason I'm giving you these examples is just in case they're useful to anyone, so that you have something actionable when you get back to work or your computer or whatever code you're working on. Be like, okay, maybe I can tackle this next. Variable names, in case you called them ABC or someone decided to call them that. Or they actually gave them good names, but somehow the code changed with time, and now they completely mean something else. All right. When do you do this? All the time. All right? In fact, so instead of having a specific time, every time we're working on a specific story, what we'll do is look at the existing code that we're actually tampering with and that we're interacting with, and we'll change that. We'll try to see how we can make that better, and step by step, that'll improve. The main problem with technical debt is that it's not visible, mostly. It's not like financial debt. You open up your bank account, you see that. It's red in your face, right? But with technical debt, it's one suggestion would be to try to make that visible, either have a list somewhere or to try to add to-dos in your code. Sonar might complain about that, but that's another problem. So try to make it visible this way. If you created the technical debt and I worked on it, I would notice there is one there, and I would say, okay, maybe I should fix that myself. Other things you can do, we spoke about automation, exploratory testing. These are some things we do with the team. Every time a developer finishes up a story, another developer takes it and tries to, test it out and see if they can break it. So, voila, that's one thing you can do. Sonar marathon, sometimes we book 2 hours and we all just attack the violations. One more thing is something interesting we've been doing with is that in the application where we spend some time just implementing something that we thought about, so something like speech to text or using leap motion to move the user interface. So a very small change, and we present that at the sprint reviews, and sometimes they pick up and the stakeholders say, okay, maybe we should work more on that, and they give it higher priority. So that's some way for you to innovate. Technical debt, fine. Incrementally, fine. What about learning and improving? So personally, there's research time. You can also put research time in there. What you could do is obviously we have to improve. You could learn, you can share, you can apply this new technology and widen your perspective so you can become more effective as a developer. What you could do is book a half a day before the end of sprint. So imagine your sprint is from Monday to Friday. Thursday, you take half a day in the morning, preferably, because this way you come here, you have your coffee, and you get started. No production issues in your head, and you say, no, we'll do it next sprint. No, we'll do it next sprint. And that happens if you do it in the afternoon. So you can do it in the morning. Each developer decides to do whatever they want. They pick whatever they want. You could work together. You can mob on it. You can pair on it. Whatever, okay? And focus, no distractions, half a day. It's very quick. It's lunchtime. So you could do that. You could learn and share your findings. Try to stay away from the code of your application so that it's much faster and it's a standalone prototype. Other things you can do in this time is you can read or listen. Audible's out now. I have some friends that on their way to work in their car, they read, well, they listen to books. And these days, it's not just robotic reading. The authors now actually spend time in speaking out the words, so it sounds human. These are some books if you're interested. So there's Java and craftsmanship, TDD, there's design patterns, JavaScript, in case anyone's interested. Soft skills for developers. So this is soft skills for software developers. This is a very, very good book if you're interested as well in changing a bit and opening up your perspective. And agile retrospectives if you want to spice it up a little in that meeting, because it gets boring sometimes. All right. So other things we've done, this is homemade, HiveMind. HiveMind, we did this thing a couple of years ago where every sprint we have 2 hours, we go in, we have a list of videos and talks, or we've had a debate over agile architecture, why, this, that. We say, okay, we're going to pick a third party. We find Martin Fowler or someone, and we sit together for 2 hours, we watch the video, and then we fight for another hour. So you could do that. That's another way to learn and improve. We take Coursera, edX, so online courses. There was a competition, where did you get, etc. So that sort of gives a bit of, sort of a playful feel to the situation. I got this list of videos in case you're interested. Lunch Crunch, sometimes at lunch we do that. That is not Slack, but I thought I'd put it here, so in case you're interested, there's some links. You'll have the slides later. Now, in case of emergency, that's what I said earlier. So great, all that is fun. There's a lot of things you can do. Technical debt, there's cleaning up code, making code faster, and there's learning. But okay, what if that production issue comes in, right? What if the CI is failing? What if they just change the scope? What if I said it's a 1 story point, turns out to be 13? What if I fall sick and someone else has to pick up the slack or pick up the story? So hopefully you're pair programming with that person and that person can do it, but still there's less capacity in the team. The famous randomly failing test. So these are emergencies that can happen, just to name a few. And if that happens, your Slack becomes your shock absorber, like in your car. It becomes a buffer. You can meet commitment. So if you're having a smooth iteration as you're writing your code and you see, okay, fine, there's an existing code that needs refactoring, I refactor it. However, if I'm behind schedule, I say, okay, I'm not going to refactor existing code. Okay, we always refactor new code. So therefore, you're gaining this time to actually make sure that you don't fall behind or you lag and you have enough time to finish up all the stories that you committed to. If it becomes a bigger problem, then you could unfortunately cancel research time. So that's half a day we said on Thursday, right? For all the team. So now you have all these developers for half a day, more time to finish up the stories. If it's too big, that's a big problem. So if it's too big, you have to talk about it in your retrospective, I guess, and figure out what to do. That being said, if you end up canceling your Slack all the time, you don't really have Slack. So you go back to the beginning, and you've overcommitted, so read the beginning of the slide, convince them again, and commit to less, okay? Because the whole point is, it's like sleep, right? You need sleep. I mean, you can't not sleep, okay? Right? I mean, I don't think so. If you do, let me know, because I'll be interested. You can't go party, right, on Saturday. The older you get, the harder it gets, but you can go party, right, and not sleep. You're screwed on Sunday. You go back to work on Monday. It's okay, but you sleep again, right? And the same thing with Slack. You can't just say, oh, no Slack, screw it. Well, you can, and that's the problem, in fact, because you don't feel it. You don't see the problem until later, unfortunately. So, given that, if you incorporate Slack, you consistently meet your iteration commitments. You rarely need overtime. You pay down technical debt. Paying down technical debt obviously allows you to increase your productivity by improving the code, which makes enhancements later in the future much faster and much easier. So that's for the part of the code. And then for you as a developer, you get to improve your knowledge, you get to learn, you get to continuously improve and learn at every iteration. This gives you more insights, that makes you a smarter and better developer, so you effectively write better code, which means your capacity as a team starts to increase as well. How do I link this back to the beginning? So in the description of the talk, I spoke about, are you in this situation? So are you struggling to stay above water like the puppy? Well, commit to less. Are you overcommitting? Commit to less. Committing to your velocity but not delivering, you're not using your Slack properly. So you commit to less anyway, and then that should allow you to improve and have constant velocity. Your agility becomes more robust because we're looking at the values and the principles, and hopefully now that you have time to learn, you're less frustrated, you're more motivated, and hopefully you'll be happy. That's good for the company. So in the end, I can say you should invest in Slack. It's important because when you do invest in Slack, you invest in yourself. And that wraps it up. These are some references. I got, so there's The Art of Agile Development by James Shore. This is a good book on how really to go into details of the why. And there's a good section about Slack as well in it. The links are all here. If you're interested more in Slack at the level of the organization, there's a book by Tom DeMarco called Getting Past Slack, Getting Past Burnout, Busy Work, and the Myth of Total Efficiency. So that's a good book as well. And then there's obviously the links in the slides. These are the slide links here. That's my blog, that's LinkedIn, Twitter. Thank you very much, and that wraps it up. I don't think we have any questions, do we? Oh yeah, we got a question. When you have reduced waste and got some slack, what is your advice to the team and how to protect that time and keep it from the PO? So that was the first part of the presentation. So when you tell the PO that, right? When you tell the PO, listen, if you give me slack, you get more stories in some time. The PO's gonna be like, hell yeah, okay? That's the beauty. In fact, we're not cheating. We're not. We're not fighting the system. We're telling them that this is how the system should be, okay? So that's how you protect that time. And those are the pitfalls. So you should have the team basically that monitors and makes sure that we are doing this stuff. You have to support each other because as a team, if one person is the only one saying, oh, let's study, let's research, that guy or that girl, she's gonna get bored and she's like, screw you guys, you do it by yourself, I'll do whatever I want. So you have to try to build that culture and that sort of between the team, and then the PO should be happy about it because you're telling him or her that they're gonna get more because you are removing waste and therefore becoming faster. Okay, so I hope I answered that question. Any more questions? We good? We good. All right, I'm just going to show you the slides here. So in case you're interested, so it's slides with a dot, so it's slid.es/mcmo. If you go there, you'll find the slides. They're online. You can comment on them. You can trash them. You can blame them. You can like them. You can do whatever you want to them. And you find all the links inside, okay? Enjoy your evening. Bye, guys.